They're all driving the same point. The 1 peso increase in the minimum jeepney fare is not enough. On day 1 of its implementation in Metro Manila, Central Luzon, Calabarzon, and Mimaropa, many drivers hesitated to charge 10 pesos in the absence of an official document. But the LTFRB says a written notice for passengers will suffice.
Hindi pa rin kami nagtatas, hindi pa nila alam. Okay lang yun, para walang away.
Kahit sulat kamay lang, tapos i-indicate nila na notice of provisional fare increase.
It took the LTFRB 4 months before partly granting the fare hike petition. It even denied the petition in March. What fueled its change of mind? Hundreds of jeepney drivers stopping their operations due to costly fuel. Based on the LTFRB data, more than 700 drivers in the National Capital Region quit plying their routes in a span of 5 days.
Kaya pa ba ng operators and drivers to continue? Nakikita sa data, hindi na. Pero kakayanin ba ng commuters kapag nag-increase tayo? Posibleng kakayanin kasi meron namang wage hike.
With less drivers on the road, commuters are now feeling the pinch. Like call center worker Shaina.
Alas 9 yung pasok ko pero andito pa rin ako. Hindi ko alam kung bus ba or jeep ang sasakyan ko.
Many commuters say they have been willingly paying more than the minimum even before the fare increase. They say it's a small price to pay to keep drivers afloat. There are 2 other pending petitions, one seeking a 14 peso minimum jeepney fare, the other 15 pesos. The LTFRB has scheduled a hearing for June 28th. Meanwhile, 90% of LTFRB franchise holders have received the 6,500 peso fuel subsidy. More than 600,000 tricycle drivers are next in line, but they are only set to receive 1,000 pesos each for the first tranche. Amor Santos, CNN Philippines.
So will there be another fuel price hike next week? Energy Undersecretary Gerardo Erguisa told CNN Philippines an increase will most likely happen, but less than the price spike that took effect this week.
Kita natin na may pag-skip pa rin ho sa market. Alam naman ho natin ngayon na kakapasa lang ng EU yung kanilang measures na talagang iiwasan ang produkto galing sa Russia. At alam ho natin na ang China ngayon ay nagtanggal na ng lockdown. Kaya yung economic activities po niya, mas nangangailangan siya ng crudo. Yun ang mga indikasyon kung bakit apektado ang daily trading. But compared to last week, in the last 3 days, hindi naman kasing laki last week, but we still have the next 2 days. And alam mo natin, ang sistema dito, ina-average dito. But as you've observed, there is an indication na medyo nag-fluctuate po siya pataas.
In March, President Duterte told the Finance Department to increase the monthly cash aid for poor families from 200 to 500 pesos to cushion the impact of fuel price hikes. The Social Welfare Department says it remains committed to fulfilling that promise. In a briefing this morning, the SWD Director Irene Dublao says the agency targets to roll out the cash aid program before Mr. Duterte's term ends. The president will step down from office at noon on June 30. Around 12.4 million households are expected to receive the subsidy. From fuel prices to water woes, thousands of residents in southern Metro Manila have had limited water supply since Wednesday. Concessionaire Maynilad announced a week-long service interruption. The company points to the algal bloom in Laguna Lake. CN Arcangel has more.
JJ Hoxon had to climb up a steep ladder to bring the hose from a Maynilad water tanker to the tank on his rooftop. Hoxon needed to fill up their tank since their village in Las Piñas has been experiencing a 12-hour water interruption since Wednesday. He's lucky to have a tank. His neighbor, Asteria T, needed to wake up early to fill up pails of water.
What we're doing is kahit ngayon parang nasa half lang yung tank namin So pinupuno namin kasi we never know kung saan na babalik ulit sa dami nang wala
Hirap na kami. Imagine, gigising ka ng hating gabi, mag-iipong ka lang. Hindi naman matapos-tapos, hindi naman mapuno yung nalalagyan mo. Mawawalan ka na ng tubig.
Around 120,000 Maynilad customers are affected by the water service interruption in Parañaque, Las Piñas, Muntinlupa, and the towns of Bacoor and Imus in Cavite. Until June 15, affected areas will experience little to no water supply for 8 hours or even more daily. Maynilad spokesperson Jennifer Rufo says the overabundance of algae at Laguna Lake has slowed down water treatment, resulting in limited water supply for their customers in Cavite and southern Metro Manila.
Quite challenging din yung kalagayan ng tubig sa Laguna Lake sa ngayon dahil meron tayo nakikita na proliferation ng algae. So para maiwasan na maapektuhan yung kalidad ng supply na pinuputos ng ating planta, ay napilitan po tayo na bawasan muna ang produksyon.
Last February, the Metropolitan Water Works and Sewerage System ordered Maynilad to implement bill rebates due to prolonged water supply interruptions over a 2-month period. Rufo says Maynilad is putting up a silt curtain to filter out algae. Installation is expected to be finished by July.
Once fully installed, target by next month, ay makaka-significantly reduce din yan. Sa epekto ng high turbidity and algal, kailangan din magsagawa ng dredging sa lake. So that's something that we are also going to work on. We're currently asking for a permit to do that.
To meet growing demand, Maynilad is constructing a new water treatment plant in Muntinlupa. There are also plans to construct a new water source such as the Kaliwa Dam. Maynilad expects water supply in the affected areas to normalize by June 16. In the meantime, the company deploys water tankers to the affected areas to serve customers.
Hopefully this will be the last, by June 15, okay na ang lahat. Kasi pag umuulan naman na, ay ma-address na dapat yung algae situation.
Maynilad customers are advised to monitor its social media accounts regularly for announcements. Cian Arcangel, CNN Philippines.
In Batangas, local governments are going the extra mile to address the high arsenic level in their groundwater. But as George Cahilas reports, officials can only come up with band-aid solutions for now.
Luz Ariola, a resident of Alitagtag, Batangas, has been extra careful in using tap water after receiving warnings about the high levels of arsenic in their groundwater. Arsenic is a harmful chemical that may cause cancer to humans.
Siyempre, natatakot din kami. Matanda na ako. Kaya kawawa yung aking mga apo na pagdating ng panahon na kapag nakagamit niyan, sino ang maapektuhan?
The local government in Alitagtag reports that there are 2 areas that still have high arsenic content in their water.
Maglaan kami ng pondo para doon sa reverse osmosis na ilalagay namin sa munisipyo na in case na talagang lumala at dumami yung affected na pumping station.
Samantala pong ating satarapong ang ating poso dahil buhay delikado ang gamitin.
In Balete, Batangas, the local government decided to shut down wells and pitcher pumps that tested positive of the chemical. As an alternative, the LGU will just ration clean water to affected residents. The local government of Santa Teresita, meanwhile, is exploring the possibility of dilution to lower the arsenic level of water.
Kung may isang baso ka ng positive sa mataas na reading, lalagyan mo ng isang baso na mababa. So, ang mangyayari dyan, mai-even, bababa yung score. So, pwede mo nang inumin. So, ganun lang ang mga nakaprepare naming aksyon.
Tama yung kanina, yung blending, yun mo ang least costly. Ngunit, ingat kahit yung pagbabantunan ng tubig kung hindi malinis, ay magkakaroon tayo ng microbiological control.
In a meeting on Thursday, the provincial government reminds affected municipalities to continue monitoring the situation and take all the necessary safety precautions. From Batangas City, George Cahiles, CNN Philippines.
President-elect Bongbong Marcos meets with U.S. Deputy Secretary of State Wendy Sherman. On Twitter, Sherman said they talked about Washington's long-standing alliance with Manila, the economic relationship between the two countries, and human rights. Sherman also met with Foreign Affairs Secretary Teddy Boy Locsin to talk about enhancing Philippine-U.S. relations amid a transition in Malacanang. Sherman is the highest-ranking U.S. State Department official to visit the Philippines since the pandemic began. She is scheduled to visit other ASEAN countries until Tuesday. Marcos's Justice Chief Designate Boying Remulla admits he has to face complicated problems that have plagued the system. Remulla met with outgoing Secretary Menardo Guevara at the DOJ office in Manila on Thursday. He said the meeting was very formative, but that he might need another one before he assumes the post on July 1st.
So first briefing na naganap ngayon, we may ask for a second one kasi masalimuot talaga ang problema ng sistema na kailangan natin isaayos. At talaga nakakatuwa naman na pinaghandaan nila na bigyan kami ng mga impormasyon na nauukol sa mga suliranin na sumasambalot sa ating sistema ng justisya.
Remulla declined to specify the issues he hopes to prioritize. When we come back on Newsnight, President-elect Bongbong Marcos's cabinet continues to take shape ahead of his inauguration on June 30th. We go above and beyond with the incoming press chief, Trixie Angeles. And we tell you about this major development from the province that has become the first to lift the face mask mandate in the country. Stay tuned to CNN Philippines.
SMC, San Miguel Corporation. Bisag unsang industriya ang sudlan niini, tinguha sa SMC ang pag-uswag o paglambo sa mga Pilipino. Karon, gikan sa SMC, aniya na ang SMC Davao Cement. SMC Davao Cement, gama sa Davao para sa Mindanao. SMC Davao Cement, ato ni bay. SMC, San Miguel Corporation. Bisag unsang industriya ang sudlan niini, tinguha sa SMC ang pag-uswag o paglambo sa mga Pilipino. Karon, gikan sa SMC, aniya na ang SMC Davao Cement. SMC Davao Cement, gama sa Davao para sa Mindanao. SMC Davao Cement, ato ni bay.
RPN DXKT 1071 sa dial sa inyong mga radyo.
cabinet members of President-elect Bongbong Marcos. The next National Security Advisor, Clarita Carlos, is seeking to continue the operations of the National Task Force to end local communist armed conflict. That's despite previous appeals to abolish the body over red-tagging controversies. Carlos also hints that there will be no peace talks with communist rebels under the next administration. She says the government should stop negotiating with communist leaders overseas and instead focus on knowing the insights of rebels in the country. Meanwhile, incoming Agrarian Reform Chief Conrado Estrella admits it would be difficult to achieve Marcos's goal of bringing rice prices down to 20 pesos per kilogram. The former Abono Party List representative points out the high prices of fuel and fertilizer.
Hanggang mga 27 na yan, ganyan. 27, 28, pwede na yan. Pero yung 20, talagang pag-aaralan mo ng gusto yan. Pag-aaralan namin ng gusto. At talaga magsusunod kami ng kilay para magawa natin yan.
Marcos announced their nominations yesterday. He has yet to name the next secretaries of some key departments, including health, agriculture, and foreign affairs. We now go above and beyond the headlines with incoming Press Secretary Trixie Cruz Angeles on new and pending appointees, Marcos's upcoming inauguration, and the push to accredit bloggers in palace briefings. Welcome to Newsnight, Attorney Trixie.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening to you. Let's first talk about the new cabinet members, Clarita Carlos as National Security Advisor and Conrado Estrella for the Agrarian Reform Department. What made them qualify?
It's no secret about Professor Carlos's expertise. The national security is tied up with political concerns, both local and international relations. And so she seems to be quite qualified for the job. Other than that, the president-elect has simply exercised his discretion. Professor Carlos has, in fact, distinguished herself in her own field, and so that was a major consideration.
Mm-hmm. And for the other, former Congressman Estrella, party list representative.
The same, his experience in the field as well as the contributions he has already made. These are general requirements of the president-elect. So at the same, it all falls in.
Pero attorney, there are still some other posts that have yet to be filled, like yung mga importante ngayon, for example, health for pandemic, meron na bang kinoconsider for that? Also, Defense Department, Foreign Affairs.
Ma'am, we have, I understand that there are discussions ongoing about the choices for these positions. We also understand the concern of the public here. We are just really waiting for the final decision. So they have not given us any information as to when or who they are going to be.
For example, attorney, yung health department, di ba, very crucial po yan. And then may mga lumulutang din na names. We have, for example, there's Dr. Ted Herbosa because he's with an advisor of the task force, no? May iba pa po bang, can you tell us that names that are being considered, especially for this one?
Ma'am, I really have no information on the names being considered.
Okay, how about for the others? Kasi earlier, si Professor Carlos was also, may report na she was being considered for foreign affairs. How about for that post, attorney?
Likewise, ma'am, we really cannot, we do not have any information as to who are being considered for any of the positions.
Okay, moving on na lang to another topic. Dun sa inauguration, do you have any other information that you can give us with regards to the venue? Also, maybe yung invitations have already been sent out ba to foreign leaders maybe?
What we do know is that invitations are already being I don't know if they're actually printed, but yes, they haven't been sent out at all yet. So we're waiting for that.
Can you tell us, for example, si U.S. President Joe Biden, is he invited, or who others are on the list?
Well, even the guest list, we have no information on that. There are security considerations, so I hope you understand why we do not give out guest lists.
Okay, we get you. Kanina lang po si Mr. Marcos, the President-elect, met with U.S. Deputy Secretary Sherman. Can you tell us more about what they talked about?
Sorry, I really apologize, but the pronouncement on this one will be released by we're waiting for the clearance from the appropriate agencies with regard to what they exactly talked about. As you understand, diplomatic relations and diplomatic talks are of a confidential nature, so what we can, the best that we can do is wait for the agencies to clear them, and then we will give out a summary of what has been talked about. So we're still waiting for that.
Okay, attorney, let me just go back to one of your statements about accrediting bloggers or vloggers. Can you give us more details about that? Ano po yung magiging consideration para, because we have the Malacanang Press Corps, di ba? So paano po yun? Will they be part of the Press Corps, or will that be a different group?
Yeah, but let me clarify. To begin with, what we're going to do is to evaluate and reassess the existing policy. Because I'd like to point out there is already a policy, and it's in the form of a department order by the PCOO Secretary Martin Andanar. It had not been implemented, so what we're going to do is take a look at it, see if this is the right time to implement the policy. Do we have to make changes? If we're going to make changes, That means that we're going to accredit. If we're going to accredit, who can be accredited and what is the participation? So these are open right now for us to investigate, to study. But the timing is also something that we need to discuss and to decide on. So what's happening is an evaluation of the existing policy. So it's the national discussion on on this policy on accreditation of bloggers, where all of these other details seem to be talked about. So let's talk about accreditation. Well, the accreditation process in the old policy required a certain number of followers, and now we're also talking about that if this should happen, and I would like to emphasize if this should happen, then we might also be looking at engagement of each of the bloggers. So we need to know if people are responding to their posts, to the information that they are giving out, and the kind of discussions that are ongoing. Well, not the kind, but for us, if you're able to elicit a response with interest from your audience, then that should also count.
But yung sinasabi po ng ibang critics na parang iba kasi yung standard when you say that, you will be accrediting yung mainstream or yung traditional media na usual na nagko-cover po sa MPC, and then for the bloggers or the vloggers.
Well, like I said kasi, yung participation natin dito, hindi pa natin na-formulate. Halimbawa, isa yon, posible na kasama nila yung Malacanang press corps. Pero posible din na interviews lang with the president, posible din special events lang ang kino-cover nila, and so on. So kailangan pang i-discuss din yun. Kailangan may decision-making process pa tayo tungkol doon kung naaangkop sila doon sa particular situation. Angkop ba para sa vloggers na mag-cover ng mga press briefings? O dapat iniimbita lang sa particular events? Kapag lumalabas ba ang presidente, pwede ba na ilang isama? Yun po mga yon ay dinidiscuss pa natin at magiging bahagi ng ating bagong polisiya if we should decide na ito na po ang nararapat na oras na ma-include sila sa dissemination ng impormasyon ng PCOO.
Huli na lang siguro, incoming Secretary Trixie, ano po yung nakikita nyo, or how do you envision yung relationship ng Malacanang with the media this time, with the new administration?
Well, the president-elect is a lot, a lot more formal than President Duterte. I'm not saying that anybody outweighs the other. They just have really different styles. But this is also, the president-elect is also a vlogger, and he still will continue with his vlogs, and so he will be engaging the public through his vlogs, through his social media platforms. So this is a little different, and I see that he's more, he is willing to explore all of these other platforms. He's not going to, totally disappear. He will still address the media, the trad media. But this is a president who will be participating in various platforms. So this is kind of, for me, a really cool thing.
Okay, thank you very much for joining us, the incoming Press Secretary Trixie Cruz Angeles. Welcome news for aspiring and adoptive parents as officials work to streamline the adoption process in the country. AC Nicholas tells us why the new adoption law is helpful for many Filipino families.
The Rosas family is a typical household, working parents supporting their 3 young children. Though it didn't take the usual path to paint this picture. 2 of the children are adopted. Their second son, Blake, in 2011, and their only daughter, Bianca, 3 years later.
Ever since I felt the love of my child, of my second child, I've been an adoption advocate.
While their first adoption went smoothly, it took 4 years before Bianca's adoption was finalized by the court. Worse, they almost lost their daughter due to a technicality.
After spending 4 years with the child, with the girl calling me daddy and me calling her daddy's girl, we were denied due to a technicality, and then we took about 8 months again for a motion for reconsideration to finally be approved.
The experience pushed Rosas to lobby for Republic Act 11642 or the Adoption and Alternative Child Care Act. The measure, signed into law just this year, simplifies the adoption of Filipino children. It also creates the National Authority for Child Care, or NACC, which will handle all adoption cases. Adoptions used to not only go through an administrative process before the Social Welfare Department, but also through judicial proceedings before they are finalized. In many cases, it would take years before an adoption is made final.
Base case scenario natin, since ano na lang talaga siya, administrative na lang yung process niya. So, pag okay lahat ng mga requirements, yung mga papers, and then the assessment conducted by the social workers, 6 to 9 months na lang po ang adoption.
The NACC is now working with stakeholders to come up with the new laws implementing rules and regulations. They want to raise awareness about the streamlined process of legally adopting a child, hoping this would stop illegal adoption practices where Filipino babies are sold for as low as 5,000 pesos.
Magkaroon kami sana ng madaming social workers para makapag-conduct ng assessment and reviews kasi crucial yon para hindi namin ma-defy yung pinakang purpose ng law. That's why we need more adoption social workers to be on the ground to review the cases.
The NACC says it will finalize the IRR by the end of June, though they are already processing adoption applications now. With the new measure, advocates and stakeholders are hopeful more Filipino children will get the family they deserve. AC Nichols, CNN Philippines.
In COVID-19 headlines, Cebu Province becomes the first local government to scrap the mandatory wearing of face masks. Cebu Governor Gwen Garcia says masking will only be required in closed and air-conditioned spaces and among those with COVID-19 symptoms. But people are encouraged to continue wearing masks in crowded outdoor places. Garcia's order takes effect immediately. The health department, however, stresses the need for face masks to prevent COVID-19 transmission. Cebu Province is currently under Alert Level 2. Sports and entertainment updates coming up. Which NBA team grabbed a 2-1 edge in the finals? The Golden State Warriors or the Boston Celtics? And because of popular demand, this 90s boy band is staging a second show in Manila. Get the details here on CNN Philippines.
SMC San Miguel Corporation. Bisag unsang industriya ang sudlan niini, tinguha sa SMC ang pag-uswag o paglambo sa mga Pilipino. Karon, gikan sa SMC, aniya na ang SMC Davao Cement.